Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 333. Today we're going to talk about One Night Werewolf the Daybreak expansion. And I know I haven't reviewed the base game because I never had it. There was probably 3 or 4 copies floating around in the game group, and it is something that we have played just about every game night for 6 to 8 months, so it has not gone away. And recently we've also been playing the Daybreak expansion, and I'll just tell you right off the bat, I mean, this is way spoiler, but this is easily one of my favorite games of the year, easily. And I know this is kind of a big shocker, I guess, because I didn't review the base game, but honestly, it never crossed my mind because everybody had it and we just played it. It was like something you just kind of play. And I realized the other day, I literally have taken this game for granted. I've said nothing about it online. Now I will say, just more spoiler, this takes the game to another level. It does some interesting things in terms of like balancing the game, which what I didn't expect. But let's go through some of the different roles, and you have these new artifact tokens that you can use. So I'll go through those kind of quickly, and then I'll give you some more of my thoughts, kind of as I go through them, but also in general at the end. So as you can see here on the left, we've got a stack of roles that come with the base game, and on the right we've got almost as big of a stack of the roles that come with the new game. And you've of course got markers in all of the different roles available, and you've also got these artifact tokens which can come out in the game, and these really change the game up quite a bit. And you've also got 2 tokens we can see here for the Sentinel role, and what the Sentinel is going to do with this token is actually put this on another player's card, and that card cannot be moved, viewed, or have any artifacts placed on it. So let's just quickly go through the different roles. First we see the Cursed, and the Cursed doesn't wake up or do anything at night. They're on the village team unless a werewolf votes for him. So what that means is at the end of the game, if the Cursed receives the most votes, and at least one of those votes is from a werewolf, the village team wins because he'll become a werewolf. So it's as if a werewolf had died. Next we have the Witch. The Witch looks at a center card and then replaces that card with another player's card, even her own. Now she doesn't necessarily have to look at a card, but if she does, she has to replace somebody's. The Overseer is pretty interesting. When the Overseer wakes up, anybody that's moved or looked at a card has to stick their thumb up. And so the Overseer is going to see who's done maybe something. And if you had a roll that you didn't actually move anything, like the Witch, you didn't actually do anything, you don't have to stick your thumb up. The Bodyguard is interesting. When he votes for a player, that player can't be killed. So if everybody voted for a certain player and they had the most votes and the Bodyguard was pointing to them, then the player with the second most votes would be killed. Next we have the Curator, and the Curator wakes up and can put an artifact token on another player's card. And here you can see an example of some of these. And these do different kinds of things. So we've got some different examples here. The Claw of the Werewolf, this actually turns the player into a werewolf. The Mask of Muting, which means the player can't talk. The Shroud of Shame, which is pretty funny. You have to actually turn your chair around, face away from other players. And when you point to pick out the player, the other players have to determine where you're actually pointing at. There's also Void of Nothingness, which does nothing. Now the interesting thing about this is the Curator doesn't even know what he put out because it's randomly put out. And you can sort of configure and set up, okay, these are going to be in play, these are the possibilities. And so you can look and you can kind of fake it and lie. You could say, oh, I got the mute one, I can't talk, even though you got the one of nothingness. Next is the Prince. The Prince cannot be killed. If they receive the most votes, the player with the next amount of votes dies. The Revealer is interesting. When they wake up, they can flip up any player's card face up. Now, if it's a Werewolf or Tanner, they have to put it back down. Otherwise, they can reveal it up. The Paranormal Investigator is a real tricky one. When he wakes up, he can look at up to 2 other players' cards. He doesn't have to, but as soon as he reveals a Werewolf or Tanner, he has to stop looking, and then he becomes a Werewolf or Tanner. The Apprentice Seer is sort of like a mini seer. They can only look at a card in the center. The Village Idiot just adds pure chaos to the game. When they wake up, they can, if they wish, move all cards except for their own to the left or the right, basically rotating everybody 1 spot left or right. Now we're going to get to the 3 werewolf roles. The Dream Wolf, instead of waking up and opening their eyes, actually sticks their thumb up. And so any other werewolves, if they exist, will know who they are, but they're not going to know who any of the other wolves are. The Mystic Wolf is basically a seer werewolf. They wake up with all the other werewolves and they can see who's who, but then they're able to go and peek at somebody's card. And this gives the werewolves a little bit more advantage in terms of the information that they have. Finally, there is the Alpha Wolf, and an Alpha Wolf can actually turn somebody else into a werewolf. So the way that the Alpha Wolf works is you take a separate werewolf card, put it in the center of the table, and then you can take somebody's card over there and then swap it with the werewolf card. So whatever they were, that card will be in the center, kind of off to the side. and then so that the other players don't mix with it. So what do I think of the game? Well, as I said before, this is definitely one of my favorite games of the year for sure. And I know it kind of technically came out at the end of last year, but I don't think so. I think it has a published date of 2014. So it's still in the running for Game of the Year this year. And with the expansion for sure is in there. Now the cool thing about the expansion, I think the main takeaway is you can kind of swing the balance. And that's very interesting for our group. Like I said, we play quite a bit. And so the interesting thing you can do, especially with the Mystic Wolf and the Alpha Wolf, is you can really kind of push the balance more towards the werewolves. And you can have a situation where, depending on what other roles are out there given, you can really swing the balance towards the werewolf, and so we can team up and say all the werewolves actually are pointing, towards villagers, depending on the number of players. So you can really lock in some good teamwork on the wolf side, especially if you have the Mystic Wolf too, because they're going to know, oh, okay, he's actually the villager or the drunk, and he did this, so I know what he did, and you can kind of manipulate the story based on that extra information. So there's a lot of cool things in here. Let me just look at these and kind of tell you some of my favorites here. The witch is kind of like, a glorified robber, but, they only kind of look at the center card. The Overseer is interesting. It adds a little bit, it's like giving just a little bit more information to the players to manipulate the situation. And then, of course, the artifacts are very, very cool because that just adds like another layer of chaos to the game, and another sort of thing that you can do to bluff. Because if you were the Tanner and you got an artifact, you're in luck because the Tanner is one of the hardest things to do to win with. But if you've got an artifact, you can kind of manipulate and stuff, and so people know that you might be constrained by the artifact, whereas it's sometimes, at least I personally have difficulty lying as the Tanner because you don't want to seem too dumb. Like, you're a really bad werewolf, so they're like, oh, well, you're just a Tanner, and, stuff like that. So it adds a lot to the game. You can really manipulate the metagame of it, which is cool. You got a lot of these extra cards. That's really the main takeaway. Other than, the werewolves get a little bit more balance towards their side with some of these special ability wolves and things. And you've got the new voices on the app and all that kind of cool stuff, which is fine. And I really like that. So it kind of changes up. I will say the extra noises and things are really good because we kind of tend to make noises like we'll slam the table and, do all kinds of stomp our feet and, act like idiots. And, this is nice because it kind of adds all that into it, and so it really creates a crazy atmosphere. And like sometimes it seems like it's random, but the wolves will be howling extra, and we're like, what are the wolves doing? Like they're really noisy over there, and so everybody's laughing and having a good time. But yeah, so instant. If you liked One Night Werewolf, then I would definitely get Daybreak. And like I said, we literally have been playing this for months and months and months and months and months. So. Definitely, if you haven't played this style of game, you really got to take a look, because I got to tell you, I haven't reviewed the base game, so I'll give you a little bit of background with me. I don't like Werewolf, and I played it years ago, and it was just kind of long and drawn out, and it turned into like this big cult of personality thing. So it was a certain kind of group I was playing with, and didn't really enjoy it. And we enjoyed the Resistance quite a bit. We used to play the Resistance all the time. Before One Night, and now One Night has totally destroyed the Resistance. We tried some other ones like Mayday or something. That was a really bad one. And some other ones. We played a lot of Coup. We really like Coup as well. I play that at lunch more, honestly, with the lunch group. That's a really good game. And can't really play this at lunch. This would be great at lunch, but it's a little noisy for lunch. But I have played with some of my lunchtime folks, and they really enjoy it as well. They had a chance to come to game night a couple times. But yeah, so this to me is sort of the crowning sort of hidden role bluffing trader thing. Like there's Dead of Winter and Battlestar Galactica and things like that are more sort of like the long con. Those are more like you've got to really be in the mood for the long con, the sort of setting up a big sort of tapestry of lies with those games, where this is perfect. It's a 10-minute thing, and you can sort of have one game inform the next, because we typically play this at least a few times in a row, whether we're waiting for another group to finish or at the end of the night and things like that. And it really works because it's just as fun to watch this being played. I remember one night it must have been like 12 or 14 people at a game night, which is a little bit above our average. And there was a couple of times there were some new folks that night, and I just stepped out and I watched like 2 or 3 games in a row. And it was great because you can see, you know, how Billy tells his stories, and you're like, okay, I see how he works now, you know, and you can kind of take that into the next game. So that's really, really fun. So yeah, anyway, you won't really find much more fun of a game than this. So anyway, so I would definitely get this. So that's all I'm going to ramble on for now, but totally get this. Give it a try if you're not a big fan of these hidden deduction games. This one you got to play a couple times, then you kind of get into it. You get into, you know, your friends and personalities, and you know how they're going to try to manipulate the situation. So definitely take a look at it if you haven't already. Thanks.